Hi guys, I am going to break down the Me Little Water Silvi stomp clap body percussion for you for practicing. So I want to simplify it and I'll add layers of understanding to it that might speak to some people more than others. I'll try to think of all the different ways that I can for the people that I know in the choir that would be useful for learning, and hopefully one of them will work for you. So I think it's best to start with just breaking it down into the fact that there's only 2 bars of 4 beats each. So if we think of bar 1 and bar 2, we have T, 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 ta, T, T. So that's the rhythm of bar 1. You can think of it as 1 and 2 and 3, 4. There's 4 beats within the bar. So 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and, or T, 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 ta, T, T. Then on the second bar, we have ta, T, 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 or 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. So the best way to try to wrap your mind around simplifying things is to just practice saying this. So let's say the first bar. So it's T, 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 ta, T, T. 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 Super simple, right? So you could also be saying 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. If we want to put that on our body next, 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. If having the numbers confuses you, T, 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 ta, T, T. So let's just do that a few times. T, 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 ta, T, T. T, 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 ta, T, T. T, 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 ta, T, T. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. So let's now add the words. Bring me little water. So notice the only piece of body percussion that doesn't have a word is when you first slap the backs of your hands onto your legs, and then you say tur here. Bring me little water. So that can be a bit tricky, so let's just try the water. Water, water, water. Bring me little water. Bring me little water. Bring me little water. T, 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 ta, T, T. T, 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 ta, T, T. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. So that's the first half. The second half is easier because it's just the ta, T, 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 T. So ta is the stomp on the right. Ta, T, 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 T. So it starts with a stomp on the right. Right, T, 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 T. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. Go slower. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. And you don't necessarily have to go side to side. If that's more confusing, then don't do it. But if it helps you to keep track of what side of your body you're on. So 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then just notice that on this second half of the bar, it's within the song, it's highlighting the percussion. So it's highlighting all these TTs, and we're just singing Silvi. So we've got Silvi, Silvi. Hang on. Bring me a little water, Silvi. Okay, so it's Silvi, Silvi, Silvi. So your Silvi is Silvi. So that's kind of the cool part, is after you say V, we just hear the percussion. Silvi. So then it goes directly from the end of that percussion right into back to the beginning of 1 and 2. So Silvi, bring me little water now. So again, on the second half, we only have the word now. On the third line, we only have the word Silvi again, and then on the fourth line, we only have the word while. So let's just review one more time, and then I'll make a separate video to sing through with the clapping at a slow pace. So here we go. First verse is T, 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 ta, T, T. So let's put it on the body. T, 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 ta, T, T. Let's do it 3 times. T, 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 ta, T, T. 2 more times. T, 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 ta, T, T. Last time. T, 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 ta, T, T. Now the second half. Ta, T, 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 T. Ta, T, 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 T. So ta, T, 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 T. So the rhythm is simple, but what can be confusing is because we're splitting the TTs up between a stomp and a clap. So the first stomp is easy, it's right on the downbeat, so we've got ta, but then the first TT, next TT is TT. So we have a T in the hand and the T on the foot. So TT, TT. That could feel awkward in your body at first until you get used to it. Ta, TT. Ta, TT. Right, clap left. Right, clap left. Right, clap left. And then we have a double clap, which is easy. Clap, clap, stomp, clap. That feels easier. Clap, clap, stomp, clap. Clap, clap, stomp, clap. So even though we have a TT divided between the stomp and the clap, it feels more natural to stomp on the downbeat and clap here. Whereas that first one is the opposite, clap, stomp, clap, stomp. So that could feel a bit like you're in a car and you're kind of not in gear. So let's try that. Second half. Silvi, ta, T, 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 T. Ta, T, 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 T. Stomp, clap, stomp, clap, clap, stomp, clap. Stomp, clap, stomp, clap, clap, stomp, clap. Stomp, clap, stomp, clap, clap, stomp, clap. Silvi, 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 Silvi. Okay, so go to the next video and we'll sing through it about 10 times really slow.
Ready?
Yeah.